What's up, guys? Studfit here, and breaking things up a little bit with a interview from someone who you've seen his work, you know who he is, but wanted to introduce you to Bam from Bam and Gerb's Spreadsheet. It's good to meet finally the man behind the spreadsheet. Bam, welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's really good to be here. I big fan of all your videos, and yeah, I mean this is a great time with ACR and everything hopping to go over the tracker.
Good. I know we've heard a lot. We'll be hearing from a lot of different people from around the community, and this is one that I'm definitely very excited to jump into. We'll kind of break it up into three different parts. First, hear a little bit about how this the tracker was created. Then we'll kind of jump into how to fill it out. We'll just touch on that piece, but then we'll really get into how to leverage this spreadsheet, how to leverage this tracker to be able to plan your inventory out, which you know I love, and that's basically where the love for my content has originally created, and why a lot of you guys tune in. And then at the very end, talk about specifically how to use the tracker for all cup ranking. So we'll get into that, but before I do, Bam, tell me a little bit about the origin story of the tracker. How did it come about, and was Mario Kart a game that you played well beyond or well before you started putting everything into Google Sheets?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I've played Mario Kart in the past. It wasn't a huge, it wasn't one of my favorite games, but it was pretty fun. My my mom actually tipped me off to the app, and she kind of was like, "This looks like something you would play." And I haven't really been doing mobile games, but this was back last year in April, so I decided to install it. Got hooked right away, and I'm an accountant by trade. I'm just a stat junkie. I love all those things, so I naturally kind of was looking for tier lists, rankings, anything to kind of get, an edge. And, I was led to Reddit, Sergeant Spike, who he does a great job, and is still making great stuff. He had his tier list graphics. And I was using those. And then off of that, there was actually a user named Super Goombario, who I haven't seen in a while. I know he's still out there, but he the tracker is actually, I kind of jacked his tracker. So a lot of the look and feel of it was from his original tracker, and then kind of just built and added in the things over time. And I originally was kind of doing it on my own in Excel, where I'm most comfortable, and I kind of started to share a little bit of it on Reddit, and a lot of people were saying, well, if it was Google Sheets, we'd use it. We don't have Excel, or we're not comfortable with it, etc. And Gerbs, who I didn't know prior, just on Reddit, kind of out of the blue, was like, well, let me run with it and see what I can do. And she converted it, entirely into Google Sheets. And then from there, we kind of just kept expanding it, tweaking it. The whole tier list thing, came later, and we're kind of, always taking feedback and trying to make it better for everybody.
That's awesome. That's such a cool story, and definitely no shame in stealing people's ideas and taking it and running with it. It's what's yeah, some of the best successful people ended up kind of taking something and turning it into something better. So kudos to you for seeing something and taking that vision and running with it, and we all appreciate that. From my perspective, and what I enjoy is being able to make wise decisions with my tickets, rubies, coins, etc., and especially when it comes to inventory. So, why don't we jump into first how to take your inventory on your phone and being able to kind of put it into the spreadsheet, just high level, and then we'll jump into kind of what to do with that information. So, we can see this is your account here, and so jump us into a little bit about how to kind of get that information there. How where are things in the sheet, and I'll go ahead and steal the first step, which is always create a copy, right? Save a copy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is my copy, but whenever we put out the new link, and there's always a reminder at the top, you kind of go to File, Make a Copy. Otherwise, it's going to send me or Gerbs an email saying, kind of John Doe or whoever is requesting access, and we're not going to give you access because that's the master copy. So yeah, file, make a copy, and then this obviously is my version. You can see I'm definitely not a whale or even a dolphin by any means, but the main input are these three tabs down here: the drivers, carts, and gliders. And so everything in beige is kind of an input color or a drop down, something to use. So you can see here on every single one of these tabs, there's the first two rows, which is the level base, and that's just what the level is in the game, and then the kind of the points cap. So if you use one uncapped ticket here, it'd be 1. If you used 6 to get to the second, it'd be a 2, and then to 3. And so really, if you're a brand new user filling it out, all of these are going to be 0. The nice thing is that this does go in order of the game. So from left to right, it follows top to bottom in the game. And the one thing, though, for existing users that I recommend, but with the caveat, is, copying and pasting your data over. The one thing that you want to be mindful of is that there are, virtually every tour, there's a break in the data because of, it's kind of annoying how Nintendo does it, but you can see here they put Baby Mario, Koala, right after White Yoshi and before Dry Bowser. So we always mark those as highlighted as pink to let you know that it's a break in the data. So when you're copying over, in this instance, I would copy over from Baby Mario all the way to White Yoshi, and then start copy over with Dry Bowser, and then over, and then go back and fill in. Like if I had pulled Baby Mario, I would put in a 1 or whatever. So you kind of just do that for each tab. I'd say copying over, it's not too hard as long as you're just kind of being mindful of the breaks in the data.
And Bam, for this, the only entry point or where you're having to put that data entry is those 2 beige rows, the level base and the points cap tier base. There's nothing else that you have to fill in this section. And so when you're saying go ahead and copy all those, just copy that one row. That's what you're saying, right? Except for that pink column.
Yeah, right. So these 2 rows, are the only really inputs on the 3 tabs. There's other inputs, but kind of out of the scope of this, but just for your inventory. And then copy these 2 rows over. So if I had a new version, I would make another tab, switch to this one, Control C, copy all my data up until the breaks, and then paste them over in the new one. And we have those highlighted pink, just so you know. If you do copy over, it should be pretty easy to tell if you made a mistake. Like if I messed up, it maybe would have like a level 4 here, and I'm like, I don't have a level 4 Baby Mario Koala. But that's kind of, if you're wondering why those are marked pink, just to let you know that there's a break in the data to make it easier for you to copy and paste over.
Cool. All right. Awesome. I have that information. I've taken the 15-20 minutes to put in all my inventory as it is today at this one moment. And of course, as I pull throughout the tour, things do change. You will have to make those adjustments. But let's say everything's perfectly lined up. Where do I go from here? What am I looking at? What are things that stand out? Where should my eyes start to gravitate towards?
Yeah. So there's a lot of data in here, and again, I'm not going to cover everything, and part of it too is I kind of view this as a sandbox. Everyone kind of does it differently and how they use the data, but kind of some of the highlights to really point out. And this applies to all the tabs, but I kind of want to start with the driver because there are just a few nuances to that the cart and the glider tabs don't have. So immediately, kind of the first thing I do is I sort this column here, this max level adjusted, A to Z. And so what this max level adjusted is long story short, it's basically, it takes the bonus point calculation. So it allows us to differentiate, a level 6 normal versus a level 6 high end. I think in Super Goombaro's original tracker, it kind of didn't differentiate between those two, and so that's what this does, and it's most precise. And so the reason why I sort it from A to Z is that I can see, up here, it's a 0, so I have no coverage on these maps at all. So if New York Minute comes back and they don't buff it, I'm screwed and ranked. But so that's kind of the first thing I do, and then from there, after you fill in your data, everything's going to populate, and then I have some of the rows hidden here because we're kind of going to focus on ATR, but there's rows which speak to ranked, and kind of what I focus on because I don't do ACR, but you can look at both or either or, and as a quick and dirty, also we have the tier list ranking, and I'm not gonna cover it now, but we have a tier list tab, and that's kind of automatic based on you putting in your data, changing it, and so it's not an exact. I'd say it's kind of more of a rough guide, but it kind of gets you started, so you can see Mario Musician, we all know, is not very good, and obviously he's unknown for me, but he's 104. So even if I took him to level 1, he might jump up a bit, but it's not going to be great. And then really what I do, and
just
maybe
before,
surprising to some people,
just real quick, Bam. High level though, when they're seeing those numbers. Green is good, red is bad. I assume that the low numbers mean that's like your number, like priority. And we'll get to maybe that section, but the lower the number, the better, right?
Correct. Yeah. And I would say, kind of like look at the colors up here are just colors to differentiate the levels. But everything else is going to be kind of on a color gradient, so you can see kind of down here, green is good. So pretty much. Not pretty much everywhere, if there's something like that, like green is always going to be the best. So lower in here is better. So it's saying, I think my number 1 driver is, Dry Bones Gold, level 6 double uncap. So, no surprise that he's number 1. But, so those are kind of the big things. And then, kind of maybe surprisingly for most people, I don't really spend that much time in the tier list tab. I think it's more helpful when you're kind of building a collection, but really I spend a lot of time digging in and kind of looking at where I have gaps in my coverage, things like that. And that's where, not really a tip, but something people aren't maybe really aware of, all of these tabs can be filtered, right? So if I want to see, hey, what's my coverage on just normal maps? So it just filters on all the normal maps. So you can see I got pretty good coverage on all of them, except for, DK Summit, Ninja Hideaway, Remix Rainbow Road 1. So, I definitely recommend people to play around with the filters. A lot of these columns have good data and interesting things in it. The one other thing I just want to point out for the driver tab, because it's mentioned in the documentation, but it's kind of maybe buried a little bit. If a map has a green background, it contains a coin box driver coverage at some point, whether it's the base, level 3, or level 6. And then if it's bold and underline, it means that you own that coin box driver and have that coverage. Oh. So that's just something that, we're kind of in the coin box meta. I know, Lucky 7's really good as well, but there's a huge priority on Coinbox in my tracker, and this just makes it a little bit easier when you're comparing items, and maybe if you want to look at a driver and see kind of how much of his overlap is there. And these 2 rows also kind of do that as well. So you can see this row here is saying how many maps does the driver have without any Coinbox overlap, owned or not, and then this one is just for the ones that are owned. And so kind of the classic examples of really good drivers in terms of that are Black Yoshi. He used to have like 13 or 14, but now he's at 10. King Bob-omb's not bad either. So those are just kind of the high level. There's obviously a lot more to it. Definitely recommend people to look at. There's a lot in here, but at least kind of the beginning part of the instruction tab and maybe some of the Q&A kind of explains, some of the differences between this. other trackers, things like that. And then, yeah, I mean, obviously in the Discord, a lot of people willing to help. But it's really just kind of rolling up your sleeves, digging in, and kind of getting into it.
Okay. So let's just kind of walk through one example, covering those yellow pieces, because I think that those are some really ones that are really going to be helpful as we go through. So let's just say like gold dry bones, and understanding what those numbers are, or whether they're in the green or gray, and then highlighted in the yellow.
Yeah, and so again, just to kind of reiterate, I have some hidden rows here. These are not like the default ones you'll see, but another thing for people, there's a lot of rows in here, and some of them are hidden just because they're maybe less used or not relevant because they're calculations, but you can definitely, play around with that in your own version. And same with the columns too. If you want to hide all your unowned items so it's easier to kind of scan across, you can do that. But yeah, so kind of with the focus on ACR here, I kind of picked out 4 rows that I think are the most helpful for, doing ACR analysis. But sticking with dry bones, you can see level 6, double uncapped, so he's at 1190 points. And then, he's my number 1 driver. And then so this row here, top shelf courses all. So this is how many courses that he's on the top shelf. Not necessarily he's the best, but he has top shelf coverage. I think the game refers to it as, like favorite course. And so this is everything. This is city map. This is RT maps. It's everything. So he has 21. And this and everything else in here, unless specified, is based on kind of what level they are. And not to go on a tangent, but just one feature that we implemented a really long time ago, but people probably aren't familiar with or use. If you see this drop down up here, and this is in the karts and gliders too, you can kind of choose what coverage it's going to assume. So right now it's normal. So that means it's only going to show me the number of tracks that the driver has at the specific level. So obviously at level 3 they get more, at level 6 they get even more. If I switch this to 3 plus 6, it's going to change everyone's data, and even if I don't own them, it's going to show me what it is at 6. So this is just something to kind of try out if you're maybe thinking about leveling up a ton of different guys to 6. You can manually put in the number 6 in here and see how it changes, or you can kind of change everyone to level 6 and see what it does. It's going to take a second here to do it, so I'm just going to switch back. But I just wanted to point that out. And so he has 21 maps, top shelf ranked. When I say ranked, it's a little confusing. I kind of use it interchangeably, but this is just non-RT and non-city maps, so not super relevant for ACR players. And then, so these 2 are the Coinbox overlaps. You can see there's 7 maps that he has that are not with Coinbox overlap on any driver. Doesn't matter, owned or unowned. And then based on the ones that I own, which is all of them except for Party Time Pauline, there's 9 maps. So those are just kind of relevant if you're trying to max out your Coinbox coverage, which I know is super important for, ranked, but especially ACR as well. And, hopefully in the future, maybe I'll have more of a granular look at kind of Lucky 7 and some of the other, frenzy skills that are kind of preferred by people for grinding. But right now it's kind of Coinbox focus. And then this one is blank, but this one is super helpful, especially when you're building out a collection. So this one is the top shelf maps that obtaining this driver is going to give you that you didn't have. So, for example, White Yoshi, you can see here, he's a 0 on Royal Raceway RT. So that's why he has a 1 here, because it's telling me if I make him level 1, meaning I own him, I obtain him in a pipe or banner or whatever, it's gonna add coverage to that, and then this 1's gonna go away. So it's just kind of letting you know, just because someone has, some maps that you don't own doesn't necessarily mean they're always the best purchase or, investment, but it's obviously someone that you're gonna want to look at, and you're gonna want to try to get. And Sorry, my sheets are going really slow today, but
Let me ask you this
that
then,
would
while
switch
that's
to
still
0.
loading. So let's look at Daisy Fairy. She, for some reason, has well, not for some reason, but she has Jocko Island 1R. And I guess I see L6, so I didn't see. But like, so that means that you would get her, or she would be your best option at level 6, or what are all the numbers, as you're kind of looking down and seeing the different actual tracks along with the actual drivers, where all those numbers represent, and kind of how do you pick up information from there?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, so if you see L3 and L6, it means that the driver is not at that level yet, assuming you have this set to normal. So yeah, in Daisy Fairy's case, you can see the highest level I have on this track is level 1, right? And you see I have a few that are overlapping, so these are all level 1, but I have nothing higher than that. So if I got her to 6, she would be the best one on this track. I don't have a row for that yet. I want to add it eventually to kind of show you how many tracks someone's going to get by taking them, to level 3 or to level 6, because I think that would be helpful for a lot of people. So right now it's a little bit manual, and one of the things I do too, especially when analyzing a driver, and so using her as an example, I would kind of filter on all of her maps, so you can see, getting her to 6, if I was going to, would be a pretty good investment, because I would take a map from a level 1 to a level 6 just by getting her to 6. Over here, I mean, I already have a level 5, so yeah, I would get to 6. So it would help a little bit, but not a ton. So that's a really good thing to look at, especially when you're thinking about taking somebody from 5 to 6.
And the sevens,
and then,
the yellow sevens that you see around there, what exactly do those stand for? Like, let's say for this scenario, I see one with Chef Mario on Choco Island 1R that you just were talking about for Daisy Fairy. What does that orange 7 or yellowish orange 7 represent?
Yeah, so these are the adjusted levels. So you don't really need to know the specific number. It's just higher is better, essentially. The color coding here is to let you know if something's the highest. So you can see here, Penguin Toad, it says he's top on 4 maps, which is this row right here. Horses as the best EKG. So this means it's not the number of maps that he has top shelf, but the number of maps that he's top shelf, and he's your best driver, the one that can theoretically obtain the most points. You can see here it's on these 4 maps, and so they're color coded orange to let you know, just for easy visibility. And then you can see down here the ones that are lighter gold shading. It means that he's a top shelf on the map, but he's not the best driver. And so you can see Donut Plains 2T as an example. My level 2 Mario Sunshine is better than him, which I mean is it's a 2 versus a 1, and there's no point cap. So that's another thing that I look at when I kind of scan across and looking at items to level. And there's a new column here that I added recently, and it's kind of the overlap. So you can see here on this map, Remix Choco Island 1R, I have 4 drivers that are all level 1 because there's 4 overlaps. So it's kind of just another data point to take into account. So, if I was to take my Chef Mario to 2, that would kind of be a tiebreaker here and make him better. So, that's really important when you're looking through and just visually scanning. Focus on the shading and kind of use that to help guide some of your decisions, especially when you have items that have a lot of overlap.
Okay, and so you've done I know you mentioned before, this isn't where you spend the majority of time, so I definitely want to get to that tier list section, but hopefully this gives you a pretty good understanding, high level, of what this section does. It's mainly for input. You can kind of use a couple different tweaks here, starting with tracks and understanding, what other drivers are on those tracks, and be able to kind of start to, it definitely is still, it sounds like a work in progress. There's still some manual involvement, and until Nintendo opens that up and allows us to be able to kind of see by track, this is probably the best that we have, and that's why I've been such a big fan of the tracker. And from my perspective, to be honest with you, Ben, before getting to know your spreadsheet very well, my main look at were those bright green for the number of courses is best driver kart glider, excluding city. That's always, for me, helpful to know. Okay, so Black Yoshi, he has 19 tracks that he's going to be probably my best option for. And then, at least to be honest with you, for me, it's just kind of plugging in some numbers. I wonder if I took him to 4, would that number go from 19 to 21 or 19 to anything? There's a couple times where I got really excited. I'm like, oh, I want to ticket this item. And then I put in that number and I was like, oh, man, taking him from level 5 to level 6 does only adds me 1 track. But if I did it on this other item,
right,
I get 2 tracks. So play around with that. Definitely wanted to get a high level overview here, but I think just for sake of time and getting to the meat of it, I definitely want to talk a little bit about the tier list and where you enjoy spending the most of your time, and where you think it would be the most helpful for the viewers.
Yeah, no, and I think that's just to piggyback off that real quick. I think that's a really good point, and that's where people have said, why don't you have like an input tab for your data? I'm kind of inputting the data in the main tab where it's showing me the results, and kind of the reason for that is to your point. You can kind of easily put in a number, try out different scenarios. What would happen if I pulled cat toad in a pipe or whatever, whatever. And so I really recommend people to play around with that. That's what I do. It's really great for running those things, kind of different scenarios. And so, yeah, this tier list tab, it's kind of there's a lot of things about it I like, and there's some things that are to be desired. And so kind of the one thing I mentioned earlier, but just kind of reiterate is this is not the gospel by any means. There's definitely some weaknesses in it, but over time it's gotten a lot better, and I think it's definitely accurate, very accurate as a rough guide. There maybe are some things that you can kind of nitpick and poke at, but I'd say once you have kind of a healthy collection, it's a really good guide. And so again, not to go over everything here, but there is no input in this tab at all. So this is purely driven by your data. You don't edit anything in here. It's just going to pull it all from those input tabs. So, as I mentioned earlier, dry bones is my number 1. And so, again, it's pulling in the data that I put in the other tab. And then you can kind of see that the one column I probably look at the most is this raw score, just because even if someone is ranked, let's say top 10, they may be really far away. So you can see Gold King Bob-omb is 42, and so Gold Dry Bones is 108. That doesn't mean Gold Dry Bones is 3 times as powerful, et cetera. It's kind of just showing you the difference in their value. So I kind of focus on these numbers more than these absolute numbers, just because they can sometimes be misleading, especially if you have a small collection. So you can see, my items are definitely condensed up here, and then there's just kind of a really big fall off, especially as I get into the 20s. And so the way that I really recommend people to look at this is to kind of really hone in on your guys that are giving you the most value, because the ones that have the highest score, if I used a ticket or 5 tickets and got Gold Dry Bones from 6 to 7, that's just pure value, because he's already my best driver. So it's just going to be taking all of his coverage and all those 20 maps or so, from 6 to 7. He's not competing with anyone else. And so I really like that about this as a quick and dirty. I do look at this when I first come into a new tour. It kind of helps to see if there's been any buffs. I'll actually just copy over my data and then keep the old sheet up, and then kind of put these side by side without even putting in any of the new tour items, just to see kind of how things moved from any of the buffs that items got. And then the one thing over here, and this is definitely less relevant for people as you get a bigger collection, and even for me, I have a decent collection now, but this is just going to kind of show you your top 10 unowned. And again, this is just a rough guide. It's not telling me I need to go out and get Pauline Rose and, buy her in the next banner or the next pipe or whatever. It's just giving me an indication, hey, take a look at her, see what she helps you with. I think there's a few maps that I have pretty low coverage on that she can help with, and so that's why she's there. But yeah, anyways, I think that this is a great starting point, especially for people that are kind of beginning to build out their collection. Once you kind of have a good idea of what your best items are, I think it becomes a little less relevant, but it's still a great quick and dirty, and there's a lot of positives about it.
Yeah, let me ask you a question about that. Obviously, the drivers gets the most screen time here, just due to all the stats you've provided when it comes to Coinbox overlap. But yeah, obviously, all the different, whether it's drivers, carts, or gliders, they all have that one column which is called higher level overlap. Obviously, in the same, just like everything else in the sheet, green is good, red is bad. But I'm curious, what do those decimals stand for?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a hard one to explain. I'll try to put it simply what it's aiming to do. So it's essentially why I created that column was just because I could have, and this is actually a good example, is Happy Ride. So I have Happy Ride at level 3, but it's already my second, you know, my number 2 cart according to the tier list. And you may think, you know, what's a level 3? Why are all your 5, 4s and 5s, you know, lower than that? And the reason is because it just has an obscene amount of coverage, especially maps that show up in ranked a lot. And so the reason why I added this was to just add a little bit more context. So basically focus more on the shading, to your point. The numbers have a meaning, but it's nothing that would make sense to anybody. And so the main thing just to know is that, hey, yes, Happy Ride is a really great card for me, but it's going to take some tickets before it gets its full potential. So what this column is just telling you is basically how many maps that the item has that it's kind of still not best on. So basically the ones in red are just telling me, hey, you have a lot of items that are higher level than this. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get a payoff. And so that's where this is a great example, and that's exactly the context that I want. So it's saying, hey, Happy Ride, again, it's a great cart, but I'm probably going to have to get it to level 5 to make this go down. And then that means it's going to start to overtake a lot of other items. So another one that is a really good example over here is Dry Bowser Gold. He has an absurd amount of maps. I think everyone knows that. But mine's at level 3. You know, he's my 9th ranked item, but his higher level overlaps 3.22, which is a really high number. I'd say anything above 3 is really extreme. And so that means, you know, I would have to play around with it and see what level it would be, but it's just letting me know if I'm going to invest in him, I'm going to have to, you know, do it for the long haul. Like, I'll probably have to take him to 6 if I was going to do it. Otherwise, he's fighting with a lot of other items for that coverage, and hence the overlap.
Good, awesome. And this is really helpful. And you know, my recommendation would be, once you put those inputs in there, you know, feel free to go to different tabs, check out different information. Make wish lists if you want of those unowned items. I know that's typically what I kind of look for from those columns. But now let's get our hands dirty in All-Cup ranking. That's why a lot of people have tuned in, and we'll kind of start with, let's say I have let's say I'm kind of halfway through the tour. I'm realizing I need to use some of those tickets that I've been saving, but use them wisely. I want to use those tickets not just for this tour, but I also want to use it for this tour because I might get a couple extra next tour. I want to do well with a All-Cup ranking, but as always, just like with any of Studfit's talking points, is I want long-term value. I want to invest in that perfect situation where all the stars align, and this may not exist, Bam. So bear with me, but I think we're trying to find the ultimate or optimum use of those tickets to help with All-Cup ranking, but then also help in our general inventory. How should I use tickets for this very unique worst case scenario?
Yeah, and that's definitely the right philosophy. I think that you know, elaborate. I think whether you're doing ACR or ranked or both, you know, just because someone is objectively a good driver, if they're not showing up in ranked or ACR, you know, there's no reason to spend your tickets. You know, just hold on to them. And so I have a great example here, and again, I kind of have hidden the rows of the ranked, but there's another row that is going to tell you how many ranked courses, meaning in the first week and the second week that a driver's on, but we're focused on ACR here. So you can see and this is in the karts and glider tabs as well, but this tells me how many maps this driver shows up in as a top shelf. So you can see Gold Koopa free running has 5 maps, which I think, let's see here real quick. Peach Vacation has 5 maps as well. So those 2 are the highest in this tour. So that's automatically something that I would key into as an ACR player. So just take a quick scan, see who's showing up. You know, you can see here, obviously, this is my number 1 driver. He's great. But if I had a ton of tickets to spend, I would not put any in him this tour. He's only on 1 map. I would definitely look for a Gold Koopa free running, a Peach Vacation, which I actually did take Peach Vacation from 4 to 5. And so I think this really helps you to kind of hone in on the items to start to look into, invest in for this tour, but then you kind of use it in combination, right? So there, you know, there may be some items, and drivers is probably a bad example, but let's see.
Hey, little I guess feature idea might be cool to kind of see that as a filter. Like you could kind of have number of, I guess all those drivers are already locked in there, but it might be nice to have something that can kind of, you know, show you in a quick glance how that would be in like a sorted format.
Yeah, I think having like a kind of a summary of kind of the drivers, it's a little hard when they're in rows because obviously you can't filter on the rows, and so yeah, I think that's something that would definitely help a lot of people and help out with that. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to the ACR, I think that's kind of the starting point in conjunction with, you know, looking at your best items. If there was an item that, you know, had like 6 maps in ACR, but it was a level 1 and it wasn't super strong, you know, I would, to your point, you're kind of looking at like long-term investment. You kind of got to do a little bit more research and not just, you know, automatically level something up because it's in ranked a lot or it's in ACR. You know, you kind of want to make sure that you're getting the items that, you know, which again, at the end of the day, it's usually the ones that have a lot of coverage. So there's not really going to be too many surprises, but I think when you put in your data, sometimes there's some gaps that, you know, you wouldn't really know without putting in your data. And I think an example of one for me that was kind of surprising when I put in my data is Blizzard balloons. It's not, you know, objectively, it's not that good of an item. And if you look at kind of other tier list rankings, it's lower, which I mean, that's fair and valid. But for me, it covers a lot of maps that that I don't have a lot of coverage, or I have low level coverage. And so that's something too, is just kind of have an open mind when you're looking at this, and understand it's just kind of letting you know with this, you know, 25 here, hey, this is an item that I probably want to research to see if I want to get it. And so, yeah, don't necessarily just think of an item, well, it's bad because people say so, et cetera. You kind of got to take into account your coverage and your items, and everyone's different. And that's, I think, a real strength of the tracker, and is super applicable for ACR as well, because unless you're a mega whale, you know, you're not going to have every single item at 6 or 7. So you do kind of, you know, have to be a little bit pickier with your tickets.
Great points. Yeah, you know, I certainly understand that. You know, you're the top 10 list that Tabor makes, which you just to make sure to toss this in there. Bam is not Tabor. I know that. Ironically, you guys went to the same college and even the same dorm room, but you guys. So there's a fun fact, but you guys are not the same person. You have different lists, different spreadsheets. Tabor and his top 10 focuses on just general high level. What are those top items that are going to be most commonly along people's, you know, most you know, courses with best drivers, karts, gliders, just based on coverage and item, etc. And he has his whole algorithm. But then you have Bam and his list, which is just specifically for you. So I think for me, you know, if I'm looking into that scenario I was describing to you just a second ago, Bam, would be to look at what is it, row 18 and 30. Which you have right next to each other. Number of courses is best drivers, karts, and gliders. And compare that with number of best courses ACR for current tour. And so you see there's a lot of commonalities there. Peach Vacation, as you say, you know, she's got 10 tracks that are most likely get a situation where you're going to be using her for the entire game, and half of those are a part of this tour. So it's good to kind of keep that in mind. Whereas, a good example would be Pink Gold Peach, the other Peach that has Coinbox. She's got 15 tracks, so she's going to be your best driver most likely, but one less for all cup ranking. So, I think from that perspective, keeping those compared right next to each other is really, really helpful, and kind of helps you kind of make some of those decisions. Just from just a high level. I mean, you look at, say, Penguin Toad. He's got 4 tracks that he's your top guy, and he in fact has 2 this tour. So, that might be one situation where you kind of throw some, change that number from level 1 to level 2 and see what happens. I like it. Anything else you want to add for all cup ranking and those players who are trying to use this tracker to best maximize all cup ranking? Let's say somebody has finished top 150, top 200, and they say, I got enough tickets, I want to go for it all, I want to get that top 10 badge, this is my favorite looking badge or whatever it might be, and they're willing to kind of spend those tickets. How would you recommend them using this sheet?
Yeah, I think, how you mentioned it, these 2 rows in combination are probably your best bet. And I think that, to your point, that's also, I know a lot of people, they don't compete in ACR every tour, either because of the time, or they're just like, hey, I only have a certain amount of items, right? So kind of the stars have to align. And so I think these rows really help to show you, day 1 of a tour, if you feel like you're going to have like a really good shot. But yeah, I would use these 2 rows to start. And then the one other, again, there's a lot of columns and rows in here, which is why it's, it's definitely a sandbox, and recommend people, playing around with it. But we have this column here, and this is in, again, the karts and gliders too, but this column, which is rank/ACR. And so this is something that I would definitely use. And so I would filter just on the ACR maps and links. So now these are all the maps in ACR this tour.
Ooh,
and so
okay.
This is a great way just to kind of filter, see the maps, and to even do more filtering. If you're like, hey, these drivers are garbage, I'm never going to get them, or they're not in pipes, I can't even obtain them, just hide them. There's no easy way to do it. It's a little manual, which I know kind of stinks, but if you just want to compare all the items you own side by side, you can just start to hide some of those drivers. So I think using the filters, using the hidden rows, that allows you to really, kind of dive in and dig down. And then to your point, Stud, how you mentioned earlier, I really like the shading, because it just lets you know right across the row what you're going up against. Like if I was analyzing Funky Kong, who he's level 2, I chuck my phone every time I pull him in a pipe. He sucks, but you can see it's like, if I look at this map, oh, he's a 20, and then I can see, oh, he's up against a 50 dry Bowser, right? So like it's just a very quick and great visual way, and I've spent hours just kind of trying to plan out my next things, and I think this is really, if you want to get down and go to the next level with the tracker, this is what I would do, is kind of filtering on all those ACR maps, and then just looking at your items just across the board. And you can see I got, some supers in here that are kind of, helping me out. But again, as we saw earlier, Gold Koopa free running. And then an example here, he actually has 5 maps that he's the best on for me right now, but he actually has a 6 map in ACR. So, if I got him to level 7, this 5 is going to change to 6. So, I eventually want to have a row that shows you that, so you don't have to kind of necessarily, do the filtering to see that yourself. But this is what I would recommend for now. So you can see his 5 moved to 6, and this is going to highlight dark gold, showing me that now he's the best on that map. So yeah, definitely recommend using these filters here in conjunction with, the columns up here. I think it's just a great visual tool.
No, I'm glad you hit on that. That actually might be one of my favorite things to take away from this. I'm always scared to mess around with people's spreadsheets because I don't know what's going to happen. But if you hide it, it's still there. Don't worry. It's you can just double click the little arrows and it'll pop back. So Don't worry about that. And then, of
Right.
course, you can always copy and paste. Worst case scenario, if something happens, you take those 15, 20 minutes to put your input back into from scratch spreadsheet, or just wait till next tour and be able to copy and paste some of those. But the goal is that you should mainly be putting input in that level base and the point cap tier. Take a look at everything else that's going on there. Play around in those two different rows. Start to use some of the filters. Hide if you need to. But I know people are scared of Excel or Google Sheets, whatever whatever we're using. But don't be afraid. There are enough people in the community that can help you out and be able to kind of give you some recommendations. But hopefully this was helpful. Again, we only have a certain period of time. I know everyone's here with us for about 45 minutes already. So thank you guys all for your time. Hopefully you found this helpful. I think, Bam, if anyone has questions or anyone wants to find the spreadsheet, I have a link in the description below for to get to this spreadsheet. And feel free to just reach out to communities on Discord if you have any questions. But Bam, thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to hearing more as time comes on and start to see this sheet evolve. But for those people who may not hear from you for another year and a half, feel free to say goodbye to your fans.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Studfit. Thanks for having me on. It was really great to go over the tracker with you.
Fantastic, guys, and good luck on All Cup ranking.